The blood on her dress had frozen into dark crimson patches by the time Gabriel Oakes found her huddled beneath the railroad bridge, her lips blue, and her entire body convulsing with shivers that seemed to come from somewhere deep within her bones. He had been riding back to Buffalo, Wyoming from a cattle delivery in Sheridan when the December wind had picked up something fierce, forcing him to seek shelter until the worst of the storm passed. The bridge spanning the frozen creek had seemed like a decent spot to wait it out, but when he dismounted and led his mare underneath, he nearly stumbled over what he first thought was a pile of rags. Then the rags moved, and he realized with a jolt that it was a woman, barely conscious, her dark hair matted with ice and her thin dress offering about as much protection as tissue paper. "Madam," Gabriel dropped to his knees beside her, his gloved hands hovering uncertainly. "Madam, can you hear me?" Her eyes fluttered open, revealing irises the color of warm honey, though there was nothing warm about her now. She tried to speak, but her teeth were chattering too violently to form words. Gabriel could see she was young, probably no more than 22 or 23, and beneath the grime and blood, she had delicate features that spoke of someone who had once been well cared for. That life was clearly behind her now. "I am going to build a fire," Gabriel said firmly, already moving to gather what dry wood he could find beneath the bridge's protective overhang. "You just hold on, you hear me? Hold on." He worked with the practiced efficiency of a man who had spent most of his 26 years outdoors, coaxing flame from tinder, despite the wind that howled around them. When the fire finally caught and began to grow, he turned back to the woman and made a decision that his mother would have approved of and his fellow ranch hands would have ribbed him about for months. Gabriel shrugged out of his heavy sheepskin coat and wrapped it around her trembling shoulders, then pulled her closer to the fire. She was so light it frightened him, as if she had not eaten properly in weeks. That thought reminded him of the provisions in his saddlebag, and he quickly retrieved them, unwrapping the cloth bundle that contained salt pork, hardtack, a hunk of cheese, and half a loaf of bread from the boarding house. "Here," he said, breaking off a piece of bread and holding it to her lips. "Slow bites. Your stomach probably cannot handle much right now." She took the bread with shaking hands, her fingers so cold they were nearly white. As she ate, Gabriel heated water from his canteen in a small tin cup, adding a pinch of the precious coffee grounds he kept for emergencies. This certainly qualified. "What happened to you?" he asked gently, once some color had started returning to her face. "That blood on your dress, is it yours?" The woman's eyes filled with tears that tracked clean lines down her dirty cheeks. "My husband," she whispered, her voice hoarse from cold and crying. "He was shot yesterday. Outlaws came to our homestead, wanted our horses. William tried to stop them. They killed him and took everything. I ran. I have been running since yesterday morning." Gabriel felt anger rise hot in his chest. He had heard about a gang operating in the territory, preying on isolated homesteads. The law had been searching for them for months, but the Wyoming wilderness was vast and unforgiving, perfect for men who wanted to disappear between crimes. "I am sorry," he said, and meant it with every fiber of his being. "No one should have to endure such a thing. I did not know where to go," she continued, her words coming faster now as if a dam had broken. "We only came out here 6 months ago from Ohio. William said we would make a good life. We had nothing back east, but at least we had each other. Now I have nothing at all." Her voice cracked on the last word, and she pressed her hand to her mouth, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Gabriel handed her the cup of coffee, waiting until she had taken several sips before speaking again. "What is your name, Rose?" she said. "Rose Remington, or I was. I suppose I am still Rose Remington, though I am a widow now." The word seemed to catch in her throat, as if saying it made it too real. "My name is Gabriel Oakes. I work at the Cross Creek Ranch, about an hour's ride from Buffalo." "You are safe now, Rose. I give you my word that I will see you somewhere warm and secure." She looked at him then, really looked at him, and Gabriel found himself oddly self-conscious under her gaze. He knew he was nothing special to look at, just a working cowboy with sun-weathered skin, brown hair that needed cutting, and eyes that his sister had once described as honest gray. But something in Rose's expression softened, as if she had found something trustworthy in his face. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. "You do not know me. For all you know, I could be lying about everything." Gabriel considered this, feeding another stick to the fire. "I suppose you could be, but I do not think you are. And even if you were, no one deserves to freeze to death under a bridge. My mother raised me better than to ride past someone in need." "Your mother sounds like a good woman." "She was. Died 4 years back from fever. But she taught me that character is what you do when no one is watching, when there is nothing in it for you except knowing you did right." He offered her more bread, which she accepted. "Besides, what kind of man would I be if I let you perish out here? I would never be able to look at myself in a mirror again." They sat in silence for a while, the fire crackling and the wind moaning overhead. Gabriel noticed that Rose had stopped shivering quite so violently, though she still held his coat wrapped tight around herself. The blood on her dress caught his attention again, and he wondered if any of it was hers. "Are you hurt?" he asked. "Any injuries I should know about?" Rose shook her head. "Just bruises from running through the brush, and my feet are in poor shape. My shoes wore through yesterday afternoon, and I have been walking mostly barefoot since then." Gabriel muttered a curse under his breath. "Let me see." She hesitated, but something in his tone must have convinced her he meant only to help. She extended her feet toward the firelight, and Gabriel had to work to keep his expression neutral. Her feet were torn up badly, bleeding in places, black with frostbite in others. Without proper care, she could lose toes, maybe more. "We need to get you to town as soon as this storm breaks," he said. "Doc Morrison will need to look at those. In the meantime, I have some clean cloth in my pack that we can use for bandages." He worked carefully, tearing his spare shirt into strips and wrapping her damaged feet as gently as he could. Rose bit her lip against the pain but did not cry out. Gabriel found himself admiring her toughness. Life out here required a certain steel in the spine, and this woman clearly had it, even if circumstances had beaten her down. "Tell me about your ranch," Rose said as he worked, perhaps wanting distraction from the pain. "The Cross Creek, you said?" "Yes, madam. I have worked there for 5 years now, since I was 21. It is a good outfit, run by a man named Samuel Hartwell. Fair wages, decent food, and they do not work you to death. I have been saving up, hoping to maybe buy my own piece of land someday. There is a parcel near Crazy Woman Creek that has been calling to me, good water and grass, sheltered from the worst winds." "That sounds lovely," Rose said wistfully. "William and I had such dreams. We were going to raise horses, have children, build something that would last." Her voice trailed off into sadness again. Gabriel finished with her feet and sat back, adding more wood to the fire. "Dreams do not have to die just because circumstances change. They might look different than you planned, but you are still alive, Rose. That means you still get to have a future, even if it is not the one you imagined." She looked at him with those honey-colored eyes, and Gabriel felt something shift in his chest, something he could not quite name. "You are a kind man, Gabriel Oakes. Your mother did raise you well." The storm raged for another hour, but beneath the bridge, they were protected from the worst of it. Gabriel shared the rest of his provisions with Rose, insisting she eat more than him despite her protests. He could see she was exhausted, her head nodding forward as the warmth and food worked their magic. "You should rest," he said gently. "I will keep watch and make sure the fire stays lit. I cannot ask you to do that. You are not asking, I am offering." He pulled his bedroll from where it had been tied behind his saddle and spread it near the fire. "Lie down. You have been through hell and back. Your body needs rest." Too tired to argue further, Rose laid down on the bedroll, still wrapped in Gabriel's coat. Within minutes, she was asleep, her breathing deep and even. Gabriel watched her for a moment, wondering about this woman who had stumbled into his life. There was something about her that tugged at him, beyond simple compassion for someone in need. He could not quite put his finger on it, but he knew with strange certainty that finding her beneath this bridge was going to change things. The storm finally broke just before sunset, the clouds parting to reveal a sky streaked with orange and purple. Gabriel gently woke Rose, and together they prepared to continue to Buffalo. The problem was his horse. The mare could carry them both, but not quickly, and Rose's feet made walking impossible. "You will ride," Gabriel said firmly when Rose started to protest. "I will lead the horse. It is only about 5 miles to town, and I have walked farther than that plenty of times. But your feet will get cold," he smiled at her concern. "I have good boots and 2 pairs of socks. I will manage just fine. Now come on, let us get you up." He helped her mount, and she settled into the saddle with a small sigh of relief. Gabriel gathered his belongings, kicked dirt over the fire to ensure it was fully extinguished, and then took the mare's reins. The snow crunched beneath his boots as they set out, following the railroad tracks toward Buffalo. They talked as they walked, Gabriel asking questions to keep Rose alert and engaged. He learned that she was 23 years old, that she had been a schoolteacher back in Ohio before meeting William, that she loved to read and missed books more than almost anything else she had left behind. She had a sister still in Ohio, married to a shopkeeper with 3 children. "You should write to her," Gabriel said. "Let her know what happened. She will want to know you are alive." "I suppose you are right," Rose said quietly, "though I hate to worry her. She tried to talk me out of coming west. She said it was too dangerous, that I did not know what I was getting into. I should have listened." "You cannot think like that. You made the choice you thought was right at the time, with the information you had. That is all any of us can do." By the time Buffalo's lights came into view, full dark had fallen and the temperature had dropped even further. Gabriel's face was numb with cold, and he could no longer feel his ears, but he pushed forward, knowing Rose needed proper shelter and medical care. Buffalo was not a large town, but it was prosperous enough, serving the ranches and homesteads scattered throughout Johnson County. The main street boasted a hotel, 2 saloons, a general store, a bank, and Doc Morrison's office, which also served as his home. Gabriel led the mare directly there, helping Rose down from the saddle with stiff hands. Doc Morrison answered the door himself, a short, balding man with wire-rimmed spectacles and sharp eyes that missed nothing. He took in Rose's condition with one sweeping glance and ushered them both inside without question. "Get her by the stove," he instructed Gabriel. "I will need to examine those feet. What happened?" Gabriel gave him the brief version while the doctor worked, unwrapping the makeshift bandages Gabriel had applied. Doc Morrison's expression grew grimmer as he assessed the damage. "You did right bringing her in," he said finally. "Another night out in the cold and she would have been in serious trouble. As it is, I think we can save everything, but it is going to be painful and require careful treatment." He looked at Rose. "Young lady, you are going to need to stay off these feet for at least 2 weeks, possibly longer." "Do you have somewhere to stay? Family in town?" Rose's face fell. "No, I have nothing. My husband and I had a homestead about 30 miles from here, but the men who killed him took everything. I do not even have money for a room." Doc Morrison exchanged a glance with Gabriel, and Gabriel knew what he had to do even before the thought fully formed. "She can stay at the ranch," he heard himself say. "We have a foreman's cottage that sits empty since Jenkins retired last year. It has a stove and a bed. I will talk to Mr. Hartwell, explain the situation. He is a decent man. He will understand." "Gabriel, I cannot ask you to do that," Rose protested, but he could see the hope in her eyes. "You are not asking, I am offering again." He turned to Doc Morrison. "Can you write down what needs to be done for her feet? I will make sure she has everything she needs." The doctor nodded approvingly. "I will do better than that. I will ride out to the ranch tomorrow to check on her, but for tonight she should stay here. I want to make sure there is no serious frostbite setting in, and she needs a proper meal and rest." Gabriel felt both relief and an odd disappointment at this news. Relief because Rose would be properly cared for, disappointment because it meant parting with her, even if only for a night. When had he become so attached to this woman he had only met hours ago? "I will be back first thing in the morning," he promised Rose. "You rest and do whatever Doc Morrison tells you to." She reached out and caught his hand, her fingers still cold but stronger than before. "Thank you, Gabriel. I do not know how I will ever repay you for your kindness. No repayment needed. You just focus on healing." He squeezed her hand gently and then released it, knowing if he did not leave now, he might not leave at all. The ride back to Cross Creek Ranch gave Gabriel plenty of time to think about what he had just committed to. He was not normally an impulsive man. He thought things through, weighed consequences, made careful decisions. But something about Rose had bypassed all his usual caution. Maybe it was the vulnerability in her eyes, or the courage she had shown in the face of terrible tragedy. Maybe it was simply that she needed help, and he was in a position to provide it. Whatever the reason, he knew he had done the right thing. Samuel Hartwell was in the main house when Gabriel arrived, going over ledgers by lamplight. He was a weathered man in his 50s, tough but fair, who had built Cross Creek from nothing over 25 years. "Oakes," he said in greeting. "Thought you would be back earlier. Storm slow you down." "In a manner of speaking, sir. I need to talk to you about something." Hartwell gestured to a chair, and Gabriel sat, explaining everything that had happened from the moment he found Rose beneath the bridge to his promise that she could stay in the foreman's cottage. He half expected Hartwell to balk at taking in a stranger, but the older man just listened, nodding occasionally. "These outlaws," Hartwell said when Gabriel finished. "They killed her husband in broad daylight, you said?" "That is what she told me, yes, sir. We should inform the sheriff. Jenkins over in Buffalo is a good man. He will want to know about this, see if it connects to other incidents." Hartwell leaned back in his chair. "As for the woman staying here, I have no objection. The cottage is just sitting empty, and it seems like the Christian thing to do. But Gabriel, I need you to understand something. Taking responsibility for someone is not a light matter. If she stays here, people will talk. They will assume things about your relationship, true or not." Gabriel felt heat rise in his cheeks but held Hartwell's gaze. "Let them talk. I know my intentions are honorable, and so will anyone who matters. Rose needs help, and we have the means to provide it. Seems simple to me." A slight smile crossed Hartwell's face. "Your mother would be proud of you, son. All right, the cottage is hers for as long as she needs it. I will have Martha prepare it tomorrow, get it aired out and supplied with necessities. You bring the young woman out when Doc Morrison clears her to travel." Relief flooded through Gabriel. "Thank you, sir. I appreciate it more than I can say." "Just make sure you get your work done," Hartwell said, but there was no heat in it. Spring roundup is only a few months away, and we will need every hand ready. Gabriel spent a restless night in the bunkhouse, his thoughts circling back to Rose again and again. He wondered if she was sleeping, if her feet hurt, if she was frightened being alone in a strange place. When dawn finally broke, he was up before the breakfast bell, washing and shaving with unusual care, much to the amusement of his bunkmate Charlie. "Who is she?" Charlie asked with a grin. "Must be someone special to have you prettying up like that." "Mind your own business," Gabriel said without malice. "Oh, it is someone special. Gabriel Oakes, the most confirmed bachelor on the ranch, is finally smitten. The boys are going to love this." Gabriel threw a damp towel at him, but he was grinning too. Maybe Charlie was right. Maybe he was smitten. And maybe that was not such a bad thing. He rode into Buffalo right after breakfast, making good time on the frozen road. Doc Morrison's house was quiet when he knocked, and the doctor himself answered, looking like he had been up all night. "How is she?" Gabriel asked immediately. "Better. The frostbite is not as severe as I feared, and there is no sign of infection. She ate a good breakfast and is resting now. You can see her if you like, but do not tire her out. She needs to conserve her strength." Gabriel found Rose in a small bedroom off the doctor's kitchen, sitting up in bed with a book in her lap. She looked 1,000 times better than she had yesterday, her face clean, her hair brushed and braided, wearing what appeared to be a borrowed nightgown. When she saw him in the doorway, her whole face lit up. "Gabriel, I was hoping you would come." He pulled a chair close to the bed, his hat in his hands. "How are you feeling?" "Much improved, thanks to you. Doc Morrison said if you had not found me when you did, I likely would not have survived the night." Her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "You saved my life." "I just happened to be in the right place. Anyone would have done the same." "I do not think that is true, but I am grateful it was you." She set the book aside. "Doc Morrison said you arranged for me to stay at your ranch. Gabriel, are you sure about this?" "I do not want to impose or cause trouble for you." "No trouble at all." Mr. Hartwell agreed immediately. "There is a cottage that sits empty, and it is yours for as long as you need it. Martha, the cook, is preparing it today. Once Doc Morrison says you are well enough to travel, I will take you there." Rose was quiet for a moment, her fingers pleating the edge of the quilt. "I keep thinking about William, about how none of this would have happened if I had just stayed inside that day, or if we had never come west at all. The what-ifs are eating me alive." Gabriel reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted, and covered her hand with his. "You cannot live in the what-ifs. They will drive you mad. What happened to your husband is a tragedy, and those men who did it are evil. But you are alive, Rose. You survived. Now you have to figure out what comes next." "I do not know how to do that," she whispered. "I feel so lost. One day at a time, 1 hour at a time if needed. You do not have to have all the answers right now. Just focus on getting well and the rest will come." She turned her hand over under his, lacing their fingers together. The gesture felt intimate, significant somehow. "Will you tell me more about the ranch, about your life there? I need to think about something besides my own misery." So Gabriel talked, telling her about the rhythms of ranch life, the long days in the saddle during roundup, the satisfaction of working with animals, the camaraderie of the bunkhouse. He told her about the endless Wyoming sky, the way the mountains looked at sunset, the fierce pride he felt in the work he did. Rose listened intently, asking questions, and gradually Gabriel saw some of the shadows lift from her eyes. Doc Morrison declared her fit to travel 3 days later. In that time, Gabriel had visited every day, often twice, bringing her books from the small lending library in town and treats from the bakery. They had talked for hours, and Gabriel found himself sharing things he rarely spoke about: his hopes for the future, his regrets about the past, his fears that he would never amount to more than just another hired hand. Rose had a gift for listening, for asking the right questions, for making him feel heard. In turn, she began to open up about her own life, her childhood in Ohio, her passion for teaching, the whirlwind courtship with William that had led to their marriage and move west. She spoke of William with love but also with honesty, admitting that their relationship had not been perfect, that they had struggled with the isolation and hardship of homestead life. "I cared for him deeply," she told Gabriel on that third day. "But I am not sure we were truly in love, not the way I always imagined love should be. We were two lonely people who found comfort in each other. Maybe that would have grown into something deeper, given time. I suppose I will never know now." The honesty of this admission struck Gabriel deeply. He had never heard a widow speak of her deceased husband with anything but glowing praise, as if death had erased all flaws. But Rose was different. She was real. The ride out to Cross Creek Ranch was slow and careful, with Rose riding while Gabriel led the horse. He had borrowed a proper side saddle from Hartwell's wife, and Rose wore clothes donated by various women in town who had heard of her plight. Buffalo was small enough that news traveled fast, and there had been an outpouring of sympathy and generosity for the young widow. "People are so kind," Rose said as they rode. "I did not expect such help from strangers." "Frontier life is hard," Gabriel replied. "People out here understand that we all need each other to survive. Today it is you who needs help. Tomorrow it might be them. That is how community works." The foreman's cottage sat on a small rise about 100 yards from the main ranch buildings, a sturdy log structure with a stone chimney and 2 rooms. Martha had indeed worked wonders. Inside was a clean bed with fresh linens, a table and 2 chairs, a well-stocked pantry, and a fire already crackling in the hearth. Someone had even added touches like curtains on the windows and a rag rug on the floor. "Oh," Rose breathed, taking it all in. "This is wonderful. I never expected anything so nice." "Martha takes pride in her work," Gabriel said, setting down the small trunk of donated clothes and supplies. "She will bring meals over 3 times a day until you are back on your feet and can come to the main house for dinner. If you need anything at all, you just let someone know." Rose turned to him, and there were tears streaming down her face. "I do not deserve such kindness." Gabriel crossed to her, cupping her face gently in his work-roughened hands, wiping away tears with his thumbs. "Yes, you do. Everyone deserves kindness, Rose, especially those who have been dealt a cruel hand." They stood like that for a long moment, close enough that Gabriel could count the gold flecks in her honey-colored eyes. His heart was pounding, and he was suddenly very aware of how much he wanted to kiss her. But it was too soon. She was grieving, vulnerable, dependent on him. He would not take advantage of that, no matter how much he wanted to. He stepped back, clearing his throat. "I should let you rest. I have work to do, but I will check on you this evening if that is all right." "I would like that," Rose said softly. "Very much." Over the following weeks, a pattern developed. Gabriel would work during the day, tending to his duties with the cattle and horses, mending fences, hauling feed. But every spare moment found him at the cottage, sitting with Rose, talking, reading aloud to her from books, teaching her to play cards. Her feet healed slowly, the torn skin knitting back together, the frostbite damage less severe than initially feared. By the end of January, she was walking short distances with only a slight limp. During this time, something grew between them. It started as friendship, born of gratitude and proximity, but it deepened into something more profound. Gabriel found himself thinking about Rose constantly, watching for her smile, listening for her laugh. She seemed to feel the same pull, her face lighting up whenever he appeared, her hand finding excuses to brush against his. It was Martha who finally said something, cornering Gabriel one morning after breakfast. "That girl is sweet on you," the older woman said bluntly. "And you are sweet on her. So what are you going to do about it?" Gabriel felt his ears burn. "It is complicated. She is a widow still grieving. I do not want to rush her or make her feel obligated because I helped her." Martha snorted. "Gabriel Oakes, for a smart man, you can be thick as a post sometimes. That girl does not look at you out of obligation. She looks at you like you hung the moon and stars, and you look at her the same way. Life is short, especially out here. Do not waste time you could be spending happy." The conversation rattled around in Gabriel's head all day. Was Martha right? Did Rose care for him as more than just a friend and rescuer? And if she did, what was he going to do about it? He found out that evening when he brought Rose a basket of apples from the root cellar. She was sitting outside the cottage despite the cold, wrapped in blankets, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. "Beautiful, is it not?" she said as he approached. "Yes," Gabriel agreed, but he was not looking at the sky. He was looking at her. Rose must have heard something in his voice because she turned to meet his gaze. "Gabriel, I need to tell you something." His heart started pounding. "All right. I know it has only been a month since William died. I know that by all rights I should still be deep in mourning, but the truth is, Gabriel, I feel more alive now than I have in years, and that is because of you." She took a shaky breath. "You make me laugh, you make me think, you make me want to imagine a future again. And I know this is probably too soon, and maybe you do not feel the same way, but I needed you to know that I have developed feelings for you. Deep feelings." Gabriel set down the basket and knelt beside her chair, taking both her hands in his. "Rose, I have been half in love with you since the moment I saw you beneath that bridge. I did not say anything because I did not want to pressure you or take advantage of your situation. But if you are telling me you feel the same way, then I need you to know that I am all in. Completely. I want to court you properly, to give you the time and attention you deserve. And when you are ready, if you are ever ready, I would be honored to make you my wife." Rose let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "You would marry me? A widow with nothing to her name, not even shoes on her feet when you found me. I would marry you if you were the richest woman in Wyoming or the poorest. It is not what you have that matters to me, Rose. It is who you are. You are strong and kind and smart and beautiful, and I want to spend every day proving to you that you are loved and valued." "Then yes," Rose said through her tears. "Yes to courting, yes to a future, yes to all of it. Yes to you, Gabriel Oakes." He rose and pulled her to her feet, mindful of her still tender feet, and wrapped his arms around her. She fit perfectly against him, her head tucked under his chin. They stood like that as the sun sank below the horizon and the stars began to emerge, holding each other in the gathering darkness. The next morning, Gabriel went to Samuel Hartwell and formally requested permission to court Rose, even though she was not under Hartwell's guardianship. It felt like the respectful thing to do, given that she was living on ranch property. Hartwell smiled and gave his blessing. "I wondered how long it would take you two to figure out what was plain to everyone else. You have my approval and my congratulations." News of their courtship spread quickly through the ranch and into Buffalo. Most people were happy for them, charmed by the romantic story of rescue and recovery. A few thought it was too soon after William's death, but Rose faced those critics head-on. "I cared for my husband," she told Mrs. Henderson, the minister's wife, who had expressed concern about propriety. "But he is gone, and I am still here. I will not spend the rest of my life wearing black, and being alone just to satisfy someone else's idea of how grief should look. Gabriel makes me happy, and I am going to embrace that happiness. As winter gave way to early spring, Gabriel and Rose became a fixture together, walking the ranch grounds, riding out to look at the parcel of land Gabriel hoped to buy, planning a future that felt suddenly within reach. Gabriel worked harder than ever, taking on extra shifts, saving every penny he could. He wanted to buy that land, wanted to build Rose a house, wanted to give her the stable, loving home she deserved. In March, Sheriff Jenkins rode out to Cross Creek with news. The gang responsible for the attack on Rose and William's homestead had been caught. There were 6 of them, and they had been terrorizing homesteaders across 3 counties. They would be tried in Cheyenne, with hanging likely for at least some of them. "I will need you to testify," Jenkins told Rose. "Identify the horses they took, confirm the timeline. Are you willing to do that?" Rose, who had been peeling potatoes at the cottage table, set down her knife. "Yes, William deserves justice, and those men need to pay for what they did." Gabriel traveled with her to Cheyenne in April, a 3-day journey by stage. The trial was brutal, with Rose having to recount the worst day of her life in front of a courtroom full of strangers. But she did it with her head held high, her voice steady, and when the jury returned guilty verdicts, she squeezed Gabriel's hand so tight it hurt. "It is over," she whispered. "That chapter is finally closed." They stayed in Cheyenne an extra day, and Gabriel used the time to take Rose to a jeweler. "Pick out a ring," he said. "Anyone you want. Gabriel, we have not even formally announced our engagement." "Then let us formally announce it. Rose Remington, will you marry me?" She laughed, joy shining from her face. "You already asked me that back in January, and you said yes. But now I am asking officially with witnesses and a ring and everything proper. So what do you say?" "Yes," Rose said, loudly enough that several people in the jewelry store turned to look. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." She chose a simple gold band with a small sapphire, practical and beautiful. Gabriel slipped it on her finger right there in the store, then kissed her soundly, much to the jeweler's amusement and the delight of other customers. They married in June, on a perfect Wyoming day with mountains visible in every direction and wildflowers carpeting the meadows. The ceremony was held at the small church in Buffalo, with what seemed like half the county in attendance. Samuel Hartwell gave Rose away, having become something of a father figure to them both. Martha cried through the entire service. Even crusty old Charlie admitted he might have gotten something in his eye during the vows. Rose wore a dress made by the women of Buffalo, white satin with lace at the collar and cuffs. Gabriel wore his best suit, the one he had bought when his mother died and had not worn since. When the minister pronounced them man and wife, Gabriel kissed his bride with all the love and promise he had been holding inside for months. The reception was held at Cross Creek Ranch, with tables set up outside and food enough to feed an army. There was music and dancing, toasts and laughter. As the sun began to set, Gabriel pulled Rose away from the celebration, leading her up to the rise where the foreman's cottage stood. "I have something to show you," he said. They rode out in the wagon, heading toward Crazy Woman Creek. When they arrived at the parcel of land Gabriel had been dreaming about, Rose gasped. There, on the best spot overlooking the water, was the frame of a house, already roughed in. "Gabriel, when did you do this?" "I have been working on it every spare moment for the past month, along with some help from the boys at the ranch. It is not finished yet, but I wanted the frame up before we married. This is our home, Rose, our future. We will finish building it together." Rose threw her arms around his neck, laughing and crying at once. "It is perfect. You are perfect. "I love you so much, Gabriel Oakes." "I love you too, Rose Oakes," he said, savoring the sound of her new name. "Now and always." They spent their first night as husband and wife in the cottage, but began moving into the new house as soon as it was ready in August. Gabriel had built it sturdy and smart, with 2 bedrooms, a real kitchen, a sitting room, and even a small study that Rose claimed immediately for her books. Life settled into a good rhythm. Gabriel worked his land and continued helping out at Cross Creek Ranch as needed. Rose started teaching school in Buffalo, riding in 3 days a week to work with the town's children. The rest of her time was spent on the homestead, tending the garden she planted, caring for the chickens Gabriel bought her, and working on the improvements they constantly made to the property. In the spring of their second year of marriage, Rose discovered she was pregnant. Gabriel was beside himself with joy, fussing over her so much that she finally had to tell him to calm down or she would lose her mind. "I am having a baby, not dying," she said with exasperated affection. "Women have been doing this since the beginning of time." "I know, but you are my wife, and this is our child, so I am allowed to worry a little." Their son was born in November, during the first snowfall of the season. Rose labored for 8 hours with Martha and Doc Morrison in attendance, while Gabriel paced outside until he wore a trail in the snow. When he finally heard the baby's cry, he nearly broke the door down getting inside. "A boy," Martha announced, beaming. "Healthy and strong with a good set of lungs on him." Gabriel approached the bed where Rose lay exhausted but radiant, holding their son. "He is beautiful," Gabriel whispered, touching the baby's tiny hand. "You are amazing. I am so proud of you. We should name him William," Rose said. "For my first husband, he should be remembered." Gabriel felt a rush of love for his wife, for her generous heart. "William Gabriel Oakes. It has a good sound to it." "Perfect," Rose agreed. 2 years later, their daughter arrived, and they named her Grace, for Gabriel's mother. She had Rose's honey-colored eyes and Gabriel's stubborn determination. William was a gentle big brother, already showing signs of his father's way with animals. The years rolled on, marked by the changing seasons and the rhythms of ranch life. They bought more land, expanded their herd, built a barn, and added a room to the house. Rose continued teaching, beloved by her students and respected in the community. Gabriel became known as one of the best horsemen in Johnson County, his reputation drawing buyers from as far as Cheyenne. On their 10th anniversary, Gabriel took Rose back to the bridge where he had found her. It was summer now, not winter, and the creek burbled pleasantly beneath the span. "Do you ever think about that day?" Rose asked, holding his hand as they stood in the same spot where their story began. "All the time," Gabriel admitted. "I think about how easily I could have taken a different route, sought shelter somewhere else. I think about the 1,000 small choices that led me to exactly the right place at exactly the right time. I think about it too. I think about how I wanted to give up, how cold I was, how certain I was that I would die beneath this bridge. And then you appeared, like an answer to a prayer I did not even know I was praying." She turned to face him, her face older now but no less beautiful to him. "You saved me, Gabriel. Not just my life, but me. You gave me a reason to keep going, to believe in happiness again." "We saved each other," Gabriel said, pulling her close. "You saved me from a life of just going through the motions, of never knowing what it meant to truly love someone. You are my heart, Rose. Everything good in my life traces back to you." They kissed beneath the bridge, surrounded by wildflowers and the sound of running water, 2 souls who had found each other in the darkest of times and built a life filled with light. When they returned home, William and Grace were waiting, along with Martha and Doc Morrison, who had been invited for the anniversary dinner. The table was laden with food, the house filled with warmth and laughter. After the meal, as the sun set in its customary display of color, Gabriel raised his glass. "To family," he said. "To second chances, to finding love in the most unexpected places, and to the woman who took a dying ember and turned it into a fire that will burn for the rest of our lives." "Hear, hear," echoed around the table. Rose caught his eye and smiled, that same smile that had been lighting up his world for a decade. In her face he saw their past, their present, and their future. He saw every moment they had shared and every moment yet to come. He saw home. That night, after their guests had departed and the children were asleep, Gabriel and Rose sat on their porch, watching the stars emerge one by one in the vast Wyoming sky. The air was warm and sweet with the scent of hay and horses, the sounds of their land settling in for the night all around them. "Happy?" Gabriel asked, though he already knew the answer. "Blissfully," Rose replied, leaning her head on his shoulder. "I have everything I could ever want. A husband I love beyond measure, 2 healthy children, a home that shelters us, land that provides for us, and a community that supports us. I am the luckiest woman alive." "I am the lucky one," Gabriel countered. "Finding you was the best thing that ever happened to me." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, hands clasped, hearts beating in sync. Somewhere in the darkness, an owl hooted. A horse nickered softly in the barn. The wind rustled through the cottonwoods that lined the creek. "You think William, my first husband, would approve?" Rose asked softly. "Of us, of this life," Gabriel considered the question carefully. "I think he would want you to be happy, and I think he would be grateful that someone loves you and cares for you the way you deserve." "I never met the man, but any husband would want that for his wife, even beyond death. I like to think you are right. I like to think he knows somehow that I am well, that I am loved, that his name lives on in our son." She squeezed Gabriel's hand. "I will always carry a piece of him with me, Gabriel. That first love, that first loss, it shaped who I am. But you are my home, my heart, my forever." "And you are mine," Gabriel said simply. As the years continued to pass, Gabriel and Rose faced the challenges that all couples face. There were hard winters when money was tight and worry kept them up at night. There were illnesses, including a bout of scarlet fever that nearly took Grace when she was 6. There were disagreements and frustrations, the inevitable friction of 2 people building a life together. But through it all, they had each other. They had learned early on that love was not just a feeling but a choice, made again and again, day after day. They chose each other in the good times and the bad, in sickness and health, in poverty and plenty. William grew into a fine young man, tall and broad-shouldered like his father, with his mother's intelligence and compassion. At 20, he married the daughter of a neighboring rancher, a spirited girl named Sarah who fit into the family as if she had always been there. They built a house on the far side of the property and began raising their own children, giving Gabriel and Rose their first grandchildren. Grace proved to be every bit as headstrong as predicted, but also brilliant. She wanted more than ranch life could offer, and at 18, she left for Denver to attend normal school and become a teacher like her mother. It broke Rose's heart to see her go, but she supported her daughter's dreams, knowing that love sometimes meant letting go. "She will come back," Gabriel assured his wife as they watched the stage carry Grace away. "This land gets in your blood. She will find her way home eventually." He was right. Grace returned 3 years later with a teaching certificate and a quiet, bookish husband named Thomas. They settled in Buffalo, where Grace took over the school from her mother, who was ready to retire and spend more time with her grandchildren. On their 20th anniversary, Gabriel took Rose on a trip. They rode the new railroad to Cheyenne, then on to Denver, where they stayed in a real hotel and ate at fancy restaurants. For 1 week, they were not ranchers or parents or pillars of the community. They were just Gabriel and Rose, two people in love. "We should do this more often," Rose said as they walked through Denver's streets, marveling at the electric lights and paved roads. "We should," Gabriel agreed, "though I confess I am already missing home." Rose laughed. "So am I. Is that terrible? We finally have this grand adventure, and all I can think about is our porch and our land and our family." "I do not think it is terrible at all. I think it means we built something worth missing." They returned to Wyoming with renewed appreciation for everything they had built. The homestead was thriving, with William running much of the day-to-day operations now. Their herd had grown to over 200 head, and they had established a reputation for quality horses that brought buyers from across the territory. But more than the material success, they had created a legacy of love. Their children had grown up seeing what a true partnership looked like, what it meant to stand by someone through thick and thin. They had learned that strength comes not from never falling but from getting back up, that kindness matters more than wealth, and that family is everything. On Gabriel's 50th birthday, the whole family gathered for a celebration. William and Sarah were there with their 4 children. Grace and Thomas came from Buffalo with their twins. Doc Morrison, now elderly but still sharp, made the journey. Even Charlie, retired from cowboying but still ornery as ever, showed up with a bottle of whiskey and a string of inappropriate jokes that had everyone laughing. As Gabriel looked around at the gathered crowd, at the house he had built with his own hands, at the land he and Rose had nurtured into prosperity, at the family they had created and the life they had lived, he felt a deep sense of peace. "What are you thinking?" Rose asked, appearing at his elbow with a piece of birthday cake. "I am thinking about that bridge," Gabriel said. "About how a single moment, a single decision to seek shelter in that particular spot, changed everything. What if I had gone somewhere else that day? What if I had been 5 minutes earlier or later? What if I had not seen you in the shadows?" Rose set down the cake and took both his hands. "But you did seek shelter there. You did find me. You did see me. And because of that, we have had 25 years of this beautiful, messy, wonderful life. We cannot live in the what-ifs, remember? You taught me that." Gabriel smiled, recognizing his own words from so long ago thrown back at him. "So I did. Besides," Rose continued, her eyes sparkling with mischief and love, "I prefer to think it was fate. You were meant to find me. We were meant to be together. All the hard parts of our stories, all the pain and loss, it was leading us to each other, and I would not change a single thing if it meant losing what we have. Not even the suffering." Gabriel asked softly, thinking of William Remington, of the violence and fear Rose had endured. "Not even that," Rose said firmly, "because it brought me here to you, to this life. I honor my past by living my present fully. And my present is standing right in front of me, looking handsomer than ever despite the gray in his hair." Gabriel laughed and pulled her close, not caring that their children and grandchildren were watching, not caring about anything except the woman in his arms. "I love you, Rose Oakes." "I love you too, Gabriel, now and always." They danced that night beneath the stars, the same stars that had witnessed their first embrace, their wedding, every important moment of their shared life. The music was provided by William on the fiddle he had learned to play as a boy, with Grace accompanying on the piano they had shipped from Denver years ago. As they swayed together, Gabriel realized something profound. The bridge had been a beginning, yes, but it was not the whole story. The whole story was this: 2 people who chose love over fear, hope over despair, future over past. 2 people who built something lasting not because it was easy but because they refused to give up. "Thank you," he whispered into Rose's hair. For what? For saying yes. For taking a chance on a cowboy who found you beneath a bridge. For building this life with me. For everything. Rose pulled back enough to look into his eyes. Thank you for seeing me that day. For stopping. For caring. For loving me so completely that I forgot what loneliness felt like. You are my miracle, Gabriel Oakes. And you are mine. The years flowed on like the creek that ran through their land, steady and sure. Gabriel and Rose grew older together, their hair turning silver, their bodies slowing down, but their love never diminishing. They sat on their porch each evening, watching the sun set, talking about everything and nothing, simply being together. When Gabriel was 60, he finally sold off most of the herd and turned the ranch operations entirely over to William. He kept a few horses, could not imagine life without them, but he was ready to slow down, to spend his days with Rose, to enjoy the fruits of their labor. They traveled some, visiting Grace and her family, taking trips to see parts of the country they had never explored. But they always came home to Wyoming, to the land that had shaped them, to the house that held all their memories. On their 40th anniversary, Gabriel once again led Rose to the bridge. It was winter, almost exactly 40 years since that fateful day. Snow covered the ground and the creek was frozen solid, but the bridge stood unchanged, a silent witness to where it all began. 40 years, Rose marveled. How is that possible? It feels like yesterday and a lifetime ago all at once. 40 years, Gabriel echoed. And I would do it all again in a heartbeat. Every moment, every challenge, every joy, all of it, as long as it was with you. They stood together in the cold, warmed by each other's presence and the memories that swirled around them. Rose shivered, and Gabriel immediately pulled her close just as he had all those years ago. Still keeping me warm, Rose said with a smile. Always, Gabriel promised. For as long as I draw breath, I will keep you warm and safe and loved. I know, Rose said simply. I have always known. They returned home to find another celebration waiting, this one a surprise organized by their children and grandchildren. The house was full of people, full of love, full of laughter. There were toasts and stories, remembrances of 40 years together, testimonies to the love that had sustained them. William stood and raised his glass. To my parents, who taught me what love looks like. You showed me that marriage is not about perfection, but about persistence, about choosing each other every single day. You gave me and Grace the greatest gift, which was a home filled with love. Thank you for everything you have given us, everything you continue to give us. May we all be blessed enough to find a love like yours. There was not a dry eye in the house as people echoed the toast. Gabriel held Rose's hand under the table, their fingers intertwined as they had been countless times before, and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. As the party wound down and guests departed, as the house grew quiet once more, Gabriel and Rose prepared for bed with the ease of long practice. They moved around each other in perfect synchronization, a dance perfected over decades. Happy anniversary, my love, Gabriel said as they settled into bed. Happy anniversary, Rose replied, nestling into his arms. Here is to 40 more. They both knew that 40 more years was unlikely at their age, but it did not matter. What mattered was that they had today, and they had each other, and they had lived a life so full of love that it would echo long after they were gone. Gabriel kissed the top of Rose's head and closed his eyes, filled with peace. He had been a cowboy who built a fire and shared a meal with a shivering woman beneath a bridge. That simple act of kindness had transformed both their lives, had created a legacy of love that would outlast them both. And as he drifted off to sleep, with his wife safe in his arms and the sound of Wyoming wind singing outside their window, Gabriel Oakes knew that he was the luckiest man who had ever lived. He had found his home, not in a place but in a person, and that home had sheltered him through every storm life could throw. The fire he had built that winter day had never gone out. It burned still in the hearts of his children and grandchildren, in the life he and Rose had created, in the love that would endure beyond time itself. And that, Gabriel thought as sleep claimed him, was the greatest gift of all.